All right guys, 5 driver myths to help you pick the best driver. Now I have a little bit of a unique situation. Almost everybody talking to you about drivers is either trying to sell you a driver or is getting sponsored by a company that's paying them to promote drivers or anything like that. I don't do any of that stuff, so I can tell you the honest truth and what to look for and what to look out for when buying a driver. I got some great information in this video, but before we get started, make sure to click that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up if you enjoy this video, and post a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. So number 1, price. Now this is the thing that we all take for granted. If something is more expensive, it must be better. But that's not the case. There's different needs for different types of players. So let's say we took a player with a low swing speed, let's say 80 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, something like that. And let's take the other end of the spectrum, which would be super high swing speed for 120 miles an hour. Well, the needs of those players' drivers will be very, very different. One player is going to need a softer shaft that's lighter weight. That way they can swing it a little bit faster, help get the ball up in the air, help get a little more backspin on the golf ball to keep the ball in the air. And the other player may need a completely different driver to take spin off the golf ball because they're swinging much faster. So if the player with a lower swing speed buys a really expensive driver that's meant for the higher swing speed player, even if they spend $1,000, $1,500 on a driver, it's not going to work out. They're actually going to hit it shorter. And then vice versa. The player with a really high swing speed, if he buys, I mean, there's some drivers that are $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, but if it's made for that lower swing speed player, it's not going to work for him. So it's really good to get fit for your driver. And I'll get to a real big cheat, an easy way to make sure that you never buy a driver that's not perfect for you. But that's number 1. I have an $80 driver here. This is my Ping i15 driver. I've had this one for 6-7 years, something like that. This is my 3rd iteration of this one. When I originally bought it, I wasn't trying to save money. I paid $450 for it when it was brand new with a custom shaft in there. But ever since then, I've always bought used ones off eBay when my face would crack and I'd have to replace the driver. So I've tried $400 or $500 drivers. I've tried several different expensive drivers. Nothing for me personally can outperform this driver. But that doesn't mean that this club is good for you. Most likely it's probably not good for you because most players aren't swinging 115 or 20 miles an hour. There's a driver that may better fit you that you think is the greatest thing ever that may not fit me very well. So in short, expensive does not mean better for you. Now another one is there's kind of a myth out there, and half of this is true, half of it isn't true. But there's hot drivers. So we always hear about the latest, greatest marketing come out. There's a brand new driver that's just been released and it's gonna be the hottest thing. It's gonna get 20 more yards. That's actually illegal. There's no way that you can buy a driver that's much longer than the one that you have. Now you can get better fit for them. Like we said, take spin off, add spin, change the loft, different stuff like that to find the perfect one for you that really does well. But there's a thing called a coefficient of restitution. I mean, if I hit this ball dead center of the club face, it's only allowed to leave that club face. We got some deer coming out of the woods over here. It's only allowed to leave that club face at a certain speed. So if they make a new driver that's a new hot driver that's got a hot face or something like that, it would actually be illegal and wouldn't pass the test. Now, there are some differences in each driver head. So when they manufacture a head, not every single head gets tested. They just test a few out of the lot. Some drivers may be a little bit hotter face than another driver. So if you go and get a fitting and you take your driver with you, and this is the real trick to bypass buying any bad clubs that are a waste of money. Take your current driver with you. Hit some golf balls with your driver and then hit this other driver. Hit your driver, hit the other driver. If your driver outperforms the new one, don't buy it. No reason wasting your money on something that's not going to perform as well. If this new driver outperforms your driver consistently, it's probably a good idea to buy it. But always make sure you bring your current golf club. Sometimes the machines will be souped up 20, 30 miles an hour or 20, 30 yards farther than you normally hit. They do things like adjust the wind, they adjust the firmness in the fairways of these launch monitors, some different tricks that you can do to try to sell you the driver. You bring your driver in and compare it side by side, you're going to know what's right. But back to what's hot or not, there's faces that are thinner on certain drivers just to the manufacturing process. They sand a little bit more off of it on accident, the face just comes out slightly thinner, and it's going to be a little bit hotter when it comes to that. It may also have a little bit more or less loft. So if you find a driver that's really good that you're killing, make sure you get that one. Offer to pay for that particular driver rather than buying a new one off the shelf because it may be a little bit different than the one that you're going to get. So that's another little trick there when you're buying a driver for you. Another myth here is that the shaft of the club is the engine. So if I get this great golf shaft, and there's some crazy expensive golf shafts go over $1,000 now for super high-end ones. Again, price doesn't mean that's going to be better for you. You can buy a $1,000 golf shaft that's terrible, that you hit worse than your $80 bucket club that you bought out of off a cell rack somewhere. So the shaft isn't the engine. If you think about that, let's imagine a player like Dustin Johnson. Big guy, super strong, kills the ball. What if I gave him a ladies flex 13-degree driver that was like the worst fit club for him possible? Guess what? He's going to hit that thing 280, 290 anyways. He could have the perfect fit driver and it's going to go 310 average. And if he hits the worst fit driver in the world, it's going to go 280 average. So the shaft isn't really the engine. You're the engine. You're the athlete. You're the player. If you have the great technique and the ability to hit good drives, you can basically take essentially any driver you want. The shaft is actually the least important part of the club head. When we adjust loft on the driver face, that's going to affect the flight of the ball the most. The way the driver face fits you and how that fits your swing is going to be the most important. The shaft is the fine tuning. So I'm the engine, the club head is the transmission, and then this is just some fine tuning details here. So we're not really that worried about what the club shaft is. Again, buy a good shaft. By all means, if you try out a $1,000 shaft and you hit it fantastic and you got the money to spend, get the driver. There's no problem with that. But don't just assume that something that's more expensive is going to be better, because from my experience, I spent thousands of dollars on drivers that were worse than this $80 driver right here. One thing that's an interesting note, a myth, is that if I make the club shorter, I'm going to be straighter and I'm probably going to play better. Now, that's not always the case. What I've found from my testing, when I've seen other testing out there, if I can lengthen this driver, pretty much everybody swings faster and everybody hits the ball a little farther with a longer driver. Now, when you do this, for some players, they lose consistency, meaning they don't hit the center of the club face as much. So try lengthening your driver. There's actually a shaft extension you can put in here. This club, I usually hit my driver fairly straight, so I'm actually swinging a 46 to 46.5 inch driver. I have a shaft extension. They cost like $3. You glue them into your club and it makes this driver longer than what the stock driver is. I like to do that with all my drivers, and that gets you a little bit more distance. So if you try that out, you're gonna probably hit it a little farther and then see if you lose some dispersion. There's no guarantee that you make this driver longer, you pick up 10 yards, you're gonna hit it any more wild. I found players add length to the club and hit it straighter because they just like the feel of it a little bit better. So try that out. The longer the club doesn't mean that it's going to be wild and erratic. Now, if you do lengthen the club and it starts going a little bit more sideways, by all means, shorten it up. Maybe go a little bit shorter. So find that perfect trade-off between what's the best distance and accuracy for you. And the cool thing about this is it costs, like I said, you take a grip off. Some people even remove and save the grip for you. You put a $3 shaft extension in there, or $5 shaft extension, you put the grip back on. It costs you 10 or 15 bucks to test this out with your local golf pro changing this out for you. You buy a new driver, it's a $500 test, it's a $300 test, whatever it is. So it's way easier to test lengthening and shortening the club than it is testing a brand new driver. The last thing here is that loft, widely misunderstood. And really the loft that's printed on your golf club, so this is a 8 degree. In reality, at the sweet spot of this club, this is a 9.8 degree loft club. So the loft that's printed on the club face, just to come out and right in and say it, most of the manufacturers cheat on that number a little bit. And here's the reason why. They know that players want to hit, for years and years, pro players always had an 8 degree driver or a 7 degree driver or a 9 degree driver. So they know that good players associate a low lofted club with a good quality driver, when in reality most of the drivers today are getting higher and higher and higher lofted. So don't worry about what this loft says on the bottom. Try different lofts out. That's going to be the #1 factor that's going to change the flight of your ball. If I go from an 8 that's written on this club, it's really closer to a 10, and I go to a 9, that's really going to affect the way my ball flies. It's going to launch much higher and get much more spin. If I go to a 10, that's going to be way different. Even more important than the head is the loft. So try out several different lofts, find out which one works best for you, play around with it a little bit. But again, the real hack here, the real tip that I can give you that's going to save you the most money, take your current driver before you ever buy another club, test it out side by side. If the new driver outperforms your old driver, get the new driver. If not, put it to the side. Don't buy the marketing hype unless it really outperforms the one that you have right now. All right, so we talked a lot about what makes a good driver, what makes a bad driver, how not to be fooled, or some myths that come up when we're seeing the marketing for drivers. But let's not be fooled here again. You, the athlete, the person, you have the ability to improve your game much more than any club out there. Just like Dustin Johnson can hit a 300-yard drive with the worst club in the world, you can improve your own golf game and get way more results than any club's going to be able to get you. Now, I think this all starts with something I call the stable fluid spine. This means that I can keep my spine slightly tilted away from the target as I go to the top of the swing, as I come down. That keeps my head nice and steady throughout the swing, and it makes it a lot easier to make solid contact. I'm going to give you one of the best stable fluid spine videos I have. It's going to preview that's going to play here in a second. Just click the card here that pops up on your screen, or the link down below in your description. You'll get instant access to that. Best of luck, and I'll see you in the stable fluid spine. What is it that allows us to have consistency in the golf swing? And what is it that allows that consistency to fall apart and create some bad rounds? That's what we're going to talk about in this video today. Let's go ahead and get started. Everything that happens in the golf swing is initially dictated by what happens with the spine. So if we're looking at a skeleton, you know, my spine's in the center of my body, and everything else in my body is attached to my spine. So my shoulders are attached to my spine, my arms attached to my shoulders, and then my arms are going to be actually swinging the club. Now, when I see players that are really struggling, those guys that are hitting it out in the woods right, they're hitting in the left, then they have a few good holes, what's happening is their spine angle is changing. As they go to the top of the swing, maybe they have a reverse pivot, spine's angled back, falling back to the right, but there's a lot of inconsistency in that. And what happens is, as good athletes as we all are, the number one fundamental in golf, correct, keep it nice and stable, but fluid, we're going to be able to hit those good, clean shots time and time again. And that's what I'm going to show you in this series of videos. Henrik Stenson, top 5 in both driving distance and accuracy. Rory McIlroy here, playing some of the best golf that anybody's ever played, and you can see just how stable.